You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Hi, I'm Jay Farner, CEO of Quicken Loans, America's largest mortgage lender. Spring will be here soon, so if buying a new home is on your to-do list, right now is the time to call Quicken Loans. Learn about which mortgage options make sense for you and get a jump on your competition. With our exclusive Rate Shield approval, the low rate you lock today is protected for up to 90 days while you shop for your new home. With a Rate Shield approval, if rates go up, your low rate stays locked. But if rates go down, you get that new, even lower rate. Either way, you win. Talk to us today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com to take advantage. Here's another great reason to work with us. For a record 9 years in a row, J.D. Power has ranked Quicken Loans highest in the nation in customer satisfaction for primary mortgage origination. Again, to lock in today's low mortgage interest rate and get the security of our exclusive Rate Shield approval, call us today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com.
For J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com. Rate Shield approval only valid on certain 30-year fixed-rate loans. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030.
Hi, welcome to the Subway ad for the new Sesame Ginger Glazed Chicken Signature Wrap. How would you like it?
I'll take a...
Sports announcer at home?
Yeah, how'd you...
We just know.
My wife picks up the new signature wrap. It's got double the rotisserie-style chicken mixed with a sesame ginger glaze. She appears annoyed at me, but she shrugs it off. Those sweet and savory flavors are calling her name. She lifts the wrap and she takes the bite! Incredible! And now she's closing the door on my... Subway, make it what you want.
Limited time only at participating restaurants. Double meat based on average 6-inch sub.
I'm little teapot, short and stout.
Here is my handle and here is my spout.
No, Dad, like this. When I get all steamed up, then I shout, tip me over and pour me out.
This is WWE superstar Roman Reigns. It only takes a moment to make a moment. Take time to be a dad today.
Visit fatherhood.gov, brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Red Wine Show. I am your co-host tonight, Diane, or Di, or whatever you want to call me. Jody is actually lounging at the pool or off somewhere in Las Vegas right now, so have fun, Jody. Yeah, have a blast. Okay. Leaving the snow in Colorado.
We're Jody Voodoo Doll.
Yeah. I am lucky enough to be joined, I should say, honored to be joined by Hammy at E2 Pilot on Twitter. Good evening, Hammy.
Get it straight. Honored, yes.
Yeah, notice how I corrected myself.
Gracie with my
and we are just thrilled to have Michael Ingmeyer join us again after a very long time, I think.
We're
going to talk about tonight where we are on Benghazi. As some of our listeners will remember, we've been talking on and off over the years with Michael as far as when Hillary was running back to, I think it was about the second or third anniversary. It was the first time that we had you on, and we also spoke with Pat Smith. And for those who don't know, Michael Ingmeyer is Sean Smith, who was one of the victims in Benghazi, his uncle by marriage. And he's been a very vocal person to make sure that for example, Hillary Clinton pays for what she does. He's written about it. So if you could give us, tell us, Michael, about, how you got involved and how you've become a really vocal advocate to, let's not forget Benghazi ever.
No, exactly. And we should hold the previous administration accountable. I mean, that's the basic issue that I had. Look, before Benghazi happened, I was just what I am. I'm a musician. I'm a music historian, okay? Occasionally write music articles. But Benghazi happened, and I got really, really furious because, first of all, I knew I was being lied to. Really, it really didn't take like any sort of paragon of wisdom or any sort of great analysis on my part to realize when I was seeing like Barack and Hillary and Susan Rice on 5 Sunday talk shows say that it was an inconsequential video, in essence, that was the impetus behind the murders of 4 Americans. And those Americans, of course, were Ambassador Stevens, Sean Smith, my nephew. I'm not even going to do it by nephew by marriage, because if Sean doesn't figure out now that I'm, his uncle.
I know.
You know what I mean? I really kind of stood up for the guy, and we'll talk a little bit more about Sean maybe in the course of things. But, the interesting thing about Benghazi that I'm starting to realize in looking at it is that what we had was Islamic American jingoism. In other words, NATO allies and America got really frustrated with Muammar Gaddafi because Muammar Gaddafi was trying to determine the financial destiny of Libya. And he was trying to get his North African neighbors in Egypt and Tunisia to join in. And what he wanted was to go to a gold standard. And he wanted to be paid for Libyan oil with Libyan gold denier. And the French were going, oh, my God, it was incomprehensible to France and to America. So some of our NATO allies, including France and America, gave 400 tons of American-made weapons to the insurgent rebels in Libya. And the problem was that we gave weapons to people that we weren't vetting very well, okay? So what we were doing was we were arming Al-Qaeda. We were arming Al-Qaeda and its offshoot, Ansar al-Sharia. And there was this big dispute, going on between the eastern portion of Libya, which was like Tripoli, and the western portion of Libya, which is Benghazi, or vice versa. I'm not a great geography guy. But the bottom line was that they were not happy in Tripoli that Benghazi was getting all the oil profits, right? So then there was this insurrectionist uprising, well armed by America and NATO, and they murdered Muammar Gaddafi. Now, Muammar Gaddafi, in the past, he might have been a pretty bad guy. But you know what? After Reagan bombed him,
yes,
he became very, very tame. He started dismantling his nuclear program. In fact, the irony is one of the people that actually murdered my nephew and murdered Ambassador Stevens was a guy named Abu Ahmed Kantala, who was just recently convicted within the past couple of years, right? And he had been in jail under Muammar Gaddafi's rule. Irony of ironies. And then when Gaddafi was murdered, all those Al-Qaeda guys that he had been gathering up and jailing were freed. So in comes in Christopher Stevens. Christopher Stevens is deposited into a diplomatic outpost in the spring of 2012, right? And what goes down then is he's in a hornet's nest. Within weeks, he's calling, emailing, telexing Hillary Clinton saying, we're in a tenuous situation here. We need additional security. In total, Chris Stevens gave Hillary Clinton over 600 requests. All were either denied or ignored.
Wow.
So on the evening of September 11th, a group of terrorists stormed the villa that Ambassador Stevens was at in Benghazi, Libya. And they set fire to that villa with diesel fuel. And this is the interesting parallel to me. Okay, you had one segment of the attack, which was the first attack that killed Ambassador Stevens, and it killed my nephew. My nephew was there as an IT guy for the State Department. He was fixing computers, you know? He's totally innocent in this whole facet. So what happened there was they set the villa on fire, and they killed these guys, in essence. They murdered these guys. There's rumors that Ambassador Stevens was captured and brutalized. I don't know that for a fact. I won't even repeat it more than that. That's a statement that's out there, you know?
Right.
But that was like mob rule. And the interesting thing was about an hour or so later, after basically the villa, the diplomatic outpost, is decimated, they start moving towards what they called a CIA annex that was about 10 minutes away. Now that attack was more military precision. And what happened there was that we had rocket-propelled mortars that ended up killing 2 CIA contractors named Glenn Doherty and Tyrone Woods. Very military precision. The gentleman that Biden and all these people were going, oh, we shouldn't have murdered this terrorist. No, he was misunderstood. Soleimani out of Iran.
Oh.
Well, he was directly involved in the coordination of teaching these folks how to hit a target with military precision accuracy. So I was really kind of glad when he went.
I'm sure a lot of people were.
Yeah, I know this is a long way to answer your question, but all this stuff really infuriated me. I had no outlet. And, you know, I'm just sort of telling this story because just thinking we got new listeners and all. And in December of 2012, Frank Wolf, who was the congressman to like the Winchester, Virginia area, you know, right around where CIA is, you know, good guy. He went on the House floor and he said, I don't want to give any funding to the Middle East, to North Africa, until we find out what the hell happened in Benghazi. So, you know, I called Frank Wolf's office. We ended up having a conversation. I ended up writing a letter of support when he was trying to establish a bipartisan select committee. And in turn, I met some really, really very influential folks who really have been very supportive, like Catherine Herridge and Virginia Thomas, Jenny Thomas, who's Clarence Thomas's wife. Jenny was the one who actually told me, hey, you need to start writing politically.
Yes.
And that started with the Daily Caller, and that transposed to Fox, briefly to Daily Signal, and now I've been at Politichicks.com as a contributor since September of 2015. And I've written largely about Benghazi, and I continue to write about Benghazi. In fact, upcoming at Politichicks, there's going to be an article called Biden in Benghazi, where we deal with old Joe's involvement here.
Which is kind of the press is staying away from, we've all noticed.
Oh, the press, of course, has stayed away from it. They forget the fact that, hey, Joe Biden was like out there preaching, you know, the company line, you know, that, hey, you know, it was a video that caused this. And Joe Biden actually told an outright lie when he was doing a debate with Paul Ryan in October of 2012, I believe, where he said, we never heard that they needed more security. We weren't aware that they needed more security. So he lied publicly.
Well,
that was a general gist of the Obama administration. They were smooth criminals.
They are 100%.
Yeah.
You know, and I know we talked when Hillary was running, because we were all extremely frustrated at that time that the press was covering up again, minimizing her involvement, the hearings.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't know, did you ever have a chance to look when WikiLeaks put out her emails? Did you ever have a chance to peruse through the emails?
My beloved wife, who's far more intelligent than me, without a doubt. Turned me on to all the WikiLeaks emails, and then Paul Valery and some other folks that are in that line, Ken Timmerman, those sort of, Benghazi experts, as far as I'm concerned, turned me on to a lot of that stuff also. And yeah, it's infuriating. And it was infuriating that the Court of Appeals basically turned over Judicial Watch's FOIA request for her to come and testify, with Tom Fitton deposing, which would have been wonderful.
Oh, absolutely.
At least. But and I noticed that the Court of Appeals that said that she didn't have to testify was composed of one Bush appointee and two Obama appointees. And that's the point of matter here, in the sense that if there's any issue that's to be decided in the courts, whether it's a criminal case or a civil case or whatever, any case that comes up regarding Benghazi, there is no Obama appointee that will ever give a fair ruling or, a full ruling. I mean, Katala and Soleimani, who were, was the guy, Iman Ahmad or something along those lines, the second Benghazi terrorist that was actually tried. They were both tried in Judge Christopher Cooper's court. They were both given sort of flimsy sentences. Katala, I know, was given 22 years, which is, about 5.25 years per life,
Right.
So I really can't expect out of the court system or the government or anything that had to do with the Obama administration. I don't expect any justice out of that facet of government ever. I mean, they've given me no reason to expect otherwise, other than that they're going to, lie and obfuscate in any way they can.
Michael, I've always wondered something about this as well. I mean, we're well past, obviously, the elections, and a lot of things get said right in the election cycle, in debates, and there was one point, what was one of the sort of gotcha lines that Trump had, right? You'd be in jail, right? Something that said to her. And
we're waiting.
Right. I wonder if things like Benghazi kind of go the same way as a lot of things when presidents leave office, and their staff, right, secretaries of state and whatever, that people kind of tend to go, and unfortunately this time we're really talking about lives. People do tend to go, let bygones be bygones, right? We're not going to go after it. It looks petty. It looks like we're trying to take, revenge on the previous,
I get your point. I really do. But
I'm not saying it's right.
Yeah, and we know it's not right. And I understand why people do, go towards that methodology. But to me, if you don't have accountability where there is a crime, it's a futile exercise. And you got to have accountability. And Hillary should be facing, thousands of violations of Federal Record Keeping Act. Barack, my God,
And
the whole thing about it, if the government had run the way it was supposed to be run, Leon Panetta would have, and a sergeant of arms would have placed Barack Obama for, under arrest on September 13th, 2012. Because by that point, they knew that there was a terrorist attack, assets were available, no assets were sent. That's dereliction of duty. That's a form of treason. There's no statute of limitations on treason. It's just like murder.
Well, I mean, I don't honestly believe that anybody can place a president under arrest. I think what's frustrating for me is that we do have this thing in this country where I think people like to kind of wipe the slate clean. They want to go, okay, we had this, knockdown, drag out, terrible, election cycle, which it always is, and it's always worse than the one before. And then they like to go, okay, take a breath, start on a clean slate. And yet we do look back and we go, why, Hillary obviously, broke espionage laws. Right. She obviously, the whole thing about don't have government emails on servers buried in your basement of your house turned out to be a good don't have government emails on a server in the basement of your house because it'll end up on WikiLeaks. And
right, exactly. Yeah.
And yet there was
or in
nothing
the offices of
from
China or the offices of Russia. Yeah.
Sure, and so we do tend to do that, and everybody, I think, at the end of the day, gets. We see some of the bigger things, but I think people do forget that there are still personal issues, right? There's personal things that happen to people, right? Like your nephew, and that it's one thing to go, okay, we're going to kind of forget about the emails. Whole thing with
Okay, I'm going to take a break, you guys, while I get them back. Stay tuned.
Get up, get your man above the red wine. Get up, get your man above the red wine.
My son was in the Army back during Desert Storm, but even then he wanted an MBA. He looked at a dozen schools, but only one offered the online education and flexibility he needed while he was in a tent in Iraq. Grantham University. Turns out that Grantham's been delivering affordable, relevant college and advanced degrees for over 65 years. Heck, if they can deliver a quality education to a soldier in a tent overseas, think about the flexibility Grantham can offer you so you can earn your degree too. It doesn't matter how complicated or full your life is, if getting a degree is on your bucket list, you'll want to do what my son did. You'll want to call Grantham. Find out how easy it is to get started on your education so you can check that college degree off your bucket list. Call Grantham right now, 800-910-1370. That's 800-910-1370. Flexible, affordable, relevant. Call 800-910-1370.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.
Attention business owners and independent contractors. This is a money-saving message from Tax Mediation Services. If your business owes $20,000 or more in taxes, we can help you today, right now. Listen, dealing with the IRS is no picnic. It's an intimidating and extremely stressful process, and you don't want to go it alone. Our attorneys know every law, every tax break, and every possible opportunity to help you resolve and reduce your tax debt. And if you owe more than $20,000, you may be at the top of their hit list. So don't take your tax debt lightly, because it will not go away on its own. The IRS can seize your bank accounts, your home, and even shut down your business. Call our tax experts today at 1-800-783-0810 and let us deal with the IRS while you focus on your business. That's 1-800-783-0810. Again, that's 800-783-0810.
about the red wine. No, get up, get your man about the red wine. Oh, get up, get your man about the red wine.
We are back. We just had a little bit of some glitches, but now we're back, and Michael's here, and Hammy is probably not going to be here for long when Lou gets her hands on him, but I digress. So, Michael, we were talking about, the relationship between the emails. So if you could go on with what you're talking about, because I was just like absolutely so interested.
Well, the thing about it, to bring back to the point, where I talked about Allen Ginsberg, and this is the point of the matter, where, we talked about wiping slates clean and, people breathing and trying to find a new path and all, which is all good, good purposes, is that, Ginsberg was interviewed in front of me and somebody was saying, because he was talking about historical references of, the McCarthy era and, obscenity trials and things along those lines. And this person was saying, well, it takes a lot of work to know the history of those things. And he says, yeah, but really it's vital to know the history of things because, in essence, your freedom is at stake. And that's the whole purpose here. So that's why we need accountability for what happened in really not just the 8 years of the Obama administration, but really the 16 years before that, when you think of things.
Right.
You need to pay attention to history, and there's a great, huge movement, obviously, in America now towards what we call, historic negationism, which is just, I'll tear down the statue, and the Civil War will go away. And if we basically give Mrs. Clinton a pass, or President, Obama a pass, then, maybe these things will go away, and they're not going to go away. And they need to be addressed. And they need to be at least addressed historically, if not, legally.
Right. And I thought what was really interesting is, we know what's been going on in the government as far as, with the FBI and looking the other way or whatnot. And it makes you wonder, what exactly have they continued to hide that happened with Benghazi? I thought, interestingly enough, reading Hillary's emails, it just seemed as though they were far more concerned with what the narrative was going to be.
Yeah,
not the fact that
the narrative. And that's important. You're bringing up a really good point there, in the sense that the narrative is what they were trying to preserve. The whole riff from May of 2011 until Benghazi was Al-Qaeda's on the run, and we killed Osama bin Laden. And so they were trying to preserve the campaign narrative of Barack Obama. Here we had the first, U.S. ambassador killed in the line of duty in over 40 years. And what does Barack do the next day? He goes campaigning in Las Vegas.
Right.
Goes to raise money for the Democrat coffers. And that tells you a lot about really the lack of moral character of Barack Obama.
He had a habit of when there was a crisis, he'd be golfing the next day or he'd be vacationing.
Right. Yeah.
And the fact, which you could see in the emails, was, Hillary Clinton stating to the world that it was because of a video when she was, telling her daughter it was a terrorist attack.
Right. Exactly.
And
she was saying to her daughter, hey, our people were killed by terrorists, Al-Qaeda terrorists, Yeah.
And when Susan Rice was actually named, as a potential vice presidential candidate for Joe Biden, I was like, no way. She has such baggage.
With you, it's material for writing. It's like, yeah. Because when she was basically appointed the CEO of Netflix, I just, of course, immediately roasted on her that, we paid a taxpayer. Think about it, folks. She was a taxpayer-paid liar. She was, by our taxes, she was being paid to toe the company line and tell the lie, perpetuate the lie, even.
Oh, absolutely.
What a vastly creepy person, you know. You know, all these people that were involved, you know, whether it was Biden, Obama, Rice, Hillary, you know, anybody that was really in the line, Ben Rhodes, all those sort of folks, Valerie Jarrett, they were criminals. You know, that's really what it comes down to. They broke the law.
And they're out there now as consultants at the think tanks that, you know, people feel, oh, yeah, the think tanks are so great. Well, I think it's the think tanks that are really coming up with all of these background issues that we keep running into. I mean, I know there was the rumor that Ambassador Stevens was running guns. That's never been really, I think, fully addressed. I mean, I really don't know anything about it.
But I think really what happened with Chris Stevens was that Chris Stevens was realizing that he was being co-opted for a really nefarious purpose. And I believe from talking to people that actually knew him that he was very uncomfortable with his role as a U.S. ambassador to Libya as far as like perpetuating the movement of weapons. Because one of the things, like when you talk about the 400 tons of weapons that were used to kill Gaddafi, a lot of those weapons ended up in the street. They were really concerned about the Stinger missiles that could shoot down planes. So they were trying to gather some of this stuff. And I do believe that they were trying to funnel it from Libya to Turkey to the ultimate destination of Syria for that little old homegrown group called ISIS.
Right.
That's the history that I've understood. See, this started really back in 2010 with PSD-11, Presidential Study Directive 11, August 2010, where they said that they were going to replace quasi-secular leaders like Gaddafi with members of the Muslim Brotherhood. And that's, God, I wish that Trump. I've requested by email and by article to President Trump that he should release that document, unredacted. It'll win him the election. You know, I mean, really.
There, and I'll tell you, you know, people up here in New Hampshire that you know, when we talk about this, that, you know, Benghazi to them is near and dear. You know, a lot of veterans.
And I thank those people for that. I thank people for their passion, the fact that people really continue to reach out and support, because you know, those are the people that help make it happen. Those are the people that keep us the home fires burning, shall we say? You know.
And I think a lot of the you know, committees, Devin Nunes and you know, the crews that have been, you know, looking at this, and then of course in 2018 when the Democrats took over the House, it pretty much stopped for the most part, and then you had the distraction of, you know, let's get rid of Trump for, you know, we're understanding today that Adam Schiff has more impeachment material because there's a new whistleblower.
Oh, really?
Is it a whistleblower,
or is it a whistleblower, or is it a whistle? You know?
Or is it a disgruntled employee? You know, that you know, it's
exactly.
When will it ever stop? And he, you know, if he gets reelected.
That's the whole thing. This whole process, this whole, like, you know, what I realized when I started really trying to dig into Benghazi, and people that I know were digging into it, is that we were really seeing a pretty misshapen face of the deep state. You know, we were seeing it up close. And this sort of behavior will continue until there is an element of accountability attached to people's behavior. As long as people are given a pass, as long as they're basically given a free ride on the government train, they're going to continue to enact this sort of behavior.
What I don't understand is, you or I, or, well, Hammy has connections, so who knows. But the average person would be jailed probably for life, never to be seen again. Right. And yet we have these people that have committed obvious crimes, and there's no consequence for it.
Well, part of the problem was that the FBI was co-opted, the CIA was co-opted, and the Justice Department was definitely co-opted. Think about Eric Holder, just as an example of an attorney general under Barack Obama's administration, you know. I mean, he was told to turn over the documents of the gun running operation. Some of those guns actually ended up in Benghazi from Fast and Furious, right? He was told by Congress, you need to produce these documents or you'll be held in contempt of Congress. Didn't produce the documents, was held in contempt of Congress. One of the few attorney generals in American history that was done that to, right? And nothing was done. He faced no consequences for being. Now, if I actually, you know, was like testifying, or any citizen was testifying before Congress, right, and they did this sort of behavior, they'd be in jail. And that's the problem what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a tier system of justice. We're dealing with a two-tier perception of what justice really should be. And we're dealing with a mainstream press on all fronts that's just, they might as well be like the Democrat national press, because that's the agenda they're trying to push. So they never call these folks out on their bad behavior.
Well,
and they're supposed
they're
to be doing that sort of thing, right? Aren't we?
they're as complicit in covering it up as the people that were involved, like the State Department and the media is I call them the public relations arm of the Democratic National Party, because that's pretty much what they are. They're not.
I don't include Fox in there. You know, I don't like separate Fox from that at all. You know, I think all these people, Fox, CNN, the three networks, MSNBC, all those people, shoot, they're basically complicit in the crimes, of which Benghazi was many of them.
Exactly.
I think that it's time for, as far as Joe Biden is concerned, and I've written this, and I'll say it again. You know, Joe Biden doesn't need to be elected. Joe Biden needs to be indicted. And not necessarily for Benghazi, but he needs to be indicted for the Fourth Amendment abuses, the FISA abuses, the unmasking of Michael Flynn. Those are real present crimes.
And let's not forget,
like talking to Ukraine and saying, if you don't lay off my son or fire the prosecutor that's trying to prosecute my son, I'm not going to give you any money. Wow. Hey, talk about an abuse of power.
And it's interesting that there are federal laws, there are state laws that address oppression or misuse of official information or misuse of official funds, and if there's no consequence for it, they're just going to continue to do it. I mean, it's common knowledge his brother has made probably millions, billions of dollars off of Joe Biden. And you can't say, well, if it was this year, then yeah, Joe Biden probably didn't know about it, because he doesn't really know much of anything. I mean, and the fact that that's all they have.
Joe operates from a low brain pan principle, I mean, let's be honest about it.
He said, he reads it from a card. You know why he reads it from a card? Because he doesn't know it anymore. I mean, today he said 6,000 military had died from COVID-19, and that's not true.
It's not true at all. The figures that he quoted are absolutely false, And,
but he gets a pass on it.
But he gets a pass because he's good old Uncle Joe. Yeah. I'm sorry. I don't really want to, elect any sort of alleged rapist, I mean, where's Tara Reid, I mean, where's her justice?
Well, the unfortunate part, when you come to the Me Too movement, it's Me Too only if you're a Democrat. If you're a conservative woman, or you asked for it, or it's
you placed yourself in that situation,
or if it just doesn't fit the narrative. I mean, you've got Kamala, camel hair, whatever you call her name.
Camel
hair. I like that.
Say it.
Camel hair.
Good. is out there visiting the family of this guy that got shot, and by the police, and without a word to the fact that she had to call the police in the first place because the guy had been in there molesting or raping her, and no call to that family. So the Me Too movement is completely fake. It's never had any real substance to it, and I'd say some of the early people that were kind of pushing it are the ones that have left it now and have said, this is not what had ever intended in the first place. But this is, the Democrats are desperate right now.
Oh, yeah.
And if you want to, there are two major areas, I think, in the country that they are desperate to take control of or regain control of. And I said something on Twitter the other day about this as far as the military goes. We probably will for the next generation be trying to undo, if we're able, the damage that was done to the Pentagon while he was there. People don't realize the influence that the president has in promoting policies within the military, in promoting generals and admirals within the military that are of his view. Forget this whole the civilian versus military business. The president has direct influence in that, and that's going to get driven all the way down through, including setting policies for the Pentagon itself. And we are going to be suffering this. I saw a poll the other day that said they think, as far as Trump support, and I don't know if this is actually true, but it was in Military Times, that Trump support for the military was only at like 48% or something like that, which I find amazing when you used to be able to count on the military to be 70% for support for Republicans. And they also said that they think that it's like 25 or 28% or something like that of the military consider themselves independent now, which I'm like, wow, where does that come from? So you have this dichotomy, but the other thing you have are the courts. They are scared to death to lose the court. They honestly do not care about Joe Biden. It could be a rock, and there's a lot of similarities there, and that they're putting in the presidency. They don't care about him. They don't care about his policies. They don't even care about that. They've got to secure the courts, and they've got to secure the military.
Joe Biden's ruling Trojan horse. Come on. I mean, we know that. So that's the point that you're making very effectively here. That he's just inconsequential. But the courts, they do need to be scared of losing courts because, right now, a lot of the, hefty positions in, the court system are being held by Obama appointees.
Look, we're seeing stuff out of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals that's, we're like, oh, is that the Ninth Circuit that's ruling in favor of conservative stuff? And look, this is going to sound very conspiratorial, okay? But and I'm not a conspiracy type, but I do honestly believe that, and if you look at everything that's happening in 2020, that the Democrats and liberals and commies and Marxists and the rest of them are all really showing their hand now. They, in no uncertain terms, have got to undermine the Constitution. They want to remove things like the Electoral College, obviously, but that's a pretty high level. They really want to get rid of many of the rights that we have. They want to go to, obviously, a stronger centralized government. They want to institute socialism and that sort of thing. But when I talk about the military, the core tenet of the military is support and defend the Constitution. As long as they're continuing to try and undermine the Constitution, there's only so far they can go with it when they still have the military out there supporting and defending the Constitution. If you can get enough members of the military to go, well, we don't think that's supporting and defending the Constitution. Well, in other words, it's open to interpretation, that sort of thing, and can go along with that. Then when they do pass enough laws or get enough stupid states to go along with taking away the arms from, the citizens of the United States, we will also no longer be able to count on the military. And I know that sounds conspiratorial, but I've been, saying for years, watch what the next thing is that's going to happen. Look, years and years ago, when the first thing came down and it was, it's the Confederate flag. It's the monument to the Confederacy. And I remember talking to my mom, and this was about 8 years or so ago. And I said to her at the time, I said, listen to their argument. Their argument has absolutely nothing to do with the Confederate flag. It has to do with attacking the men who had something to do with something that they claim, right, is something that makes those men no longer legitimate forms of, praise or admiration or respect or anything else. Exactly. If you simply move that over a little bit, it's not a far jump to get to the founding fathers. And if you can undermine the founding fathers, you can completely undermine the Constitution of the United States. You can't undermine the Constitution of the United States as long as you and I are out here with weapons and arms to defend it. And you can't undermine it as long as there is a military that also says they'll defend it. But you take away those two things, and we all become Portland, Oregon.
Exactly.
Now, what have you been hearing about civilian militias? Because what I'm hearing up in my area is that people are saying that when the election happens, be prepared, not for like food, but they're concerned enough that the supply chain is going to be disrupted. So they're saying to stockpile. But also the formation of civilian militias, because they're concerned enough that the police are being undermined, law enforcement's being undermined. They're concerned with the military, not the regular military. You brought up a good point where you said when Obama put his generals in. And yes, Obama put his generals in, but Trump removed those generals. So then you have the next layer that's coming up.
But you had years of influence down through the ranks. You replace a general, you got to replace him with somebody, and he's going to be a colonel that worked for that previous general.
And you're correct. I mean, and I'm going, like, I talked to my uncle. He was a commander in the Navy, and he worked in NATO. He worked at the Pentagon, and he still talks to a lot of people. He's retired because he's hearing the fact that he said there was about 2 layers when Obama put his generals in and removed that top layer, and then he said there was about 2 layers of Obama people, and then under that it's not Obama. So you got the 2 layers. I don't understand any of this stuff. You probably know. What is it, general and lieutenant general? I don't even know. Anyhow, but
you got the flag ranks, and then you've got the upper officer ranks, such as colonel, lieutenant colonel, major, that kind of thing. You got the lower officer ranks.
Right. Now it's the top tier. The top 2 tiers are what Obama had. So you noticed where before, for example, how the Navy came out and said we're not going to have any more Catholic masses. That lasted a day, and it was reversed. Where before, and I know, when Obama was, taking basically religious rights away from the military, it lasted until pretty much Trump came back into office. They normally would not react that quick to just rescind the decision. So you can see that the layers are starting to move back up. So that's what I hope anyways. I know I'm not probably making any sense whatsoever.
No, but back to your original question on the militia. I'm very cautious on the militias. And the reason I am is because one of the things, that I do look at, liberals always love to trot out the well-regulated militia. And what they try to trot that out for is somehow or another that counters the other part of the statement that says, citizens, bearing arms, right? The right to bear arms. But I am concerned about militias from the standpoint of the lack of coordination, the lack of training, the lack of sort of a hierarchical thing. One of the things that we have in this country is we had it even back in the Revolutionary War, and that was that we had militias, but those militias actually were part of worked up through the regular army in some way, shape, or form. So I am concerned about militias. I'm concerned about vigilantism, and I don't want to see it come to that. I think that the liberals do want to see it come to that because they will use that as an excuse to further erode rights on firearms, to erode rights to free speech for us, to, I mean, even here in Virginia, they passed a law just last year trying to outlaw militias. Like, no one had ever been attacked by a militia. No one had ever been threatened by a militia. But they tried to write a law to outlaw militias. And their idea of a militia was basically 3 or more people agreeing to show up someplace with guns. Right? That was their idea of a militia. So while I have concerns about militia, they're not so much from whether or not I would, like to have, this group of guys, standing between me and a bunch of liberals. It's that's what the liberals want, so that they can show, sort of society falling apart, and then they can override our rights and erode our rights away. Right.
Well, when the last time they had militia, you remember when the recruiting center, they were being shot, the recruiters at the armed forces, at the different various recruiting centers. You remember when they had? I think that was probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely, sure.
And in our state, anyways, the militia, they're made up of veterans, former veterans of the military. They actually went to the recruiting centers and they stood guard outside with their guns, to be a barrier. They were being a barrier between the recruiters, protecting them, and the people that would attempt to attack them. So I think when I say the militias, I think they're being a barrier between rioting and law enforcement, especially if law enforcement, for whatever reason, gets disbanded. They're being the barrier for the people, if you will, versus the ones that are trying to take away the rights from the people. I think that's what in their minds, that's what they're doing.
Well, let me qualify my statement then and just kind of put it this way. If we get to the point where the law has to be enforced, or civility of any sort across the nation has to be enforced by untrained, unregulated militias running around, we've lost the battle for the country. We're well beyond the problem of the fact that we have militias, and that really is kind of the worst thing that can happen. And there is a difference. One of the other problems that we're kind of dealing with right this second is you see, everything from, guys out there saying we're going to show up and we're going to, protect property with firearms. And of course, those guys get denigrated in the media, from the Boogie Boys, who nobody seems to know who the hell they are. But of course, they get white supremacists, but they're not. I think most of them are libertarians or something. I don't know what they are. So anybody right now that shows up with firearms and says we're going to protect property, we're going to protect citizens, are going to be portrayed in the press as, conservatives gone wild, right? And militia, all the words that they use to trigger, liberals to go out and vote away our rights.
All you need right now is to say the word Trump, and that'll trigger them pretty good.
This is my thing. I'm going to tell you very honestly, and I think I don't think I have to say this because I think it's happening naturally. People are being patient. The left is I mean, they're advertising what's going to happen on November 4th if the president wins the election again. They're saying there's going to be rioting in the streets. They're saying they're going to take it to the next level. They don't have any problem saying it. And I know a lot of people are frustrated. And, Kurt Schlichter had a good article that he wrote on this the other day about, exercise a little bit of patience and exercise a little bit of thought, right? When we say, oh, why don't they just send in the military and shut these guys down? There's a lot more to it than that. But part of that is that we recognize how the liberals will use that, right? And use it against us. And there's a lot of patience being exercised, I think, today to go, I don't want to take the bait, because that taking that bait will influence the election in some ways, because it will be magnified on TV. Right? It doesn't matter how many people have been killed, how many stores have been, looted, how many buildings have been burnt, how many cities have been destroyed by these idiots 100 and something days in, right? That doesn't matter, because that's not going to get talked about on TV. But one guy shows up with a gun and ends up in self-defense even, right, shooting, a couple of guys in the street. And that has been an endless news cycle.
Very true. Very true.
So I'm very cautious of militias.
And it's the same thing. They will they will promote, the person that they'll ignore what happened. I suppose they're looking at they ignore the cause. They're only looking at the effect.
Oh yeah,
and that can and that's the same thing that happened when it came to Benghazi. They ignored the cause of it, which we know was the bumbling of Obama and the sneakiness and Hillary Clinton missing her 3 a.m. call, because she did miss that 3 a.m. call. Let's just face it, that's exactly what happened. But you look at the narrative and the media, and the media is working arm in arm with, I don't know. You think they're influencing people's minds? I'm not seeing it. Like, we voted yesterday in New Hampshire as a primary, and the Republicans showed up 2-1 over Democrats in my town, at least 2-1, and which was shocking. Of course, my guy didn't win to run against Jean Shaheen, but Corky is going to be running against Jean Shaheen. Corky Mesner. Oh, it's going to be an interesting. But I think he's more like the Donald Trump guy, where he's going to get down and dirty, I think, and really hammer her, and she has a lot. So Michael.
Yes.
How is I'd love to have you on again, because I'd really love to, because I know we're running out of time here, to discuss, if you are willing, your brother, George.
Sure. We would do that separate show or something.
Yeah, because I think it would be a really good show to talk about. I read the article, and it was wonderful. Very touching. Very touching. And we all know that September is Suicide Awareness Month. This is actually the beginning of, it's in the middle of Suicide Awareness Week. So we really want to touch on that subject, because sometimes all a person needs is a shoulder or a kind word. For people that have been affected, and it's a very hard thing to deal with, and I share your pain with you. It's not a pain we want to share. And I wanted to ask too, how is Pat?
Last time I talked to Pat, she was doing pretty good. That was a while back. We haven't talked lately.
Right, and for those,
rough, obviously.
Yeah,
and I plan on, after September 11th, reaching out to her and just seeing how she's doing. But her health has improved. She's kind of backed away from being out front of a lot of this, because she just doesn't really have any desire or energy to do so.
Well, it's hard when the State Department tells you that you're not an immediate relative.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just,
and we also had things like when we were trying.
Hello. Oh, we're very sorry about that. But okay. But what we were talking about is Pat Smith was Sean Smith's mom, and Jody and I were lucky enough to interview her, and she had stated, as soon as she started really asking questions, she was told by the State Department that they were not going to give her any more information because she was not considered an immediate relative. This was Sean Smith's mother. How a mother could not be considered an immediate relative is beyond me, but they felt obviously she was asking too many questions, and they shut her down. It was a very emotional show. I think, Cammie, you remember. I think Jody and I were sobbing with her.
Sure, absolutely.
Hello, you've reached the Ingmar residence. Please leave a message, and we'll call you back as soon as possible. Thanks, and have a great day.
Yeah, I think it was probably one of the toughest shows in all the years that I've been doing kind of the internet radio stuff. It was probably the toughest conversation ever.
Yeah, it was he was her only son, right? I think he was her only child.
Yeah,
I believe
he certainly was, and his wife apparently was, and that side of the family was against whatever how Pat viewed the situation, and due to that, and because they aligned themselves more with Obama, why I have no idea, that the Pentagon used that to basically say she was not the direct relative, and as such, had nothing to say about it. So,
oh, that was so frustrating.
Yeah.
But we are actually at the end of our show. Thank you so much, Hammy, for coming on. And where can we find you? On Twitter.
YouTube Pilot.
And you can find me at DMB1031. And you can find Michael Ingmeyer at Voodoo Wolf. He has fantastic music, so make sure you look into his fantastic music skills. And we will be having him on again, as it is Suicide Awareness Month. And the story that he wrote about his brother George, who passed away due to suicide, is a very touching story. You can find that on Politichecks. So we thank you so much for coming on. And I'm hoping, Hammy, you might want to make this a regular thing. Hint, 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 hint. He's silent for once in his entire life. I can't believe it.
Jody?
Yes. Remember we used to be two girls and a guy, or we were your angels, Hammy's angels. Anyways, have a great week, everybody. Thank you very much. Say goodbye, Hammy.
Goodbye, Hammy.